Well, this is going to be a hell of a round two for sure. Guys, our prayers have been answered. The Battle of Alberta is on. The first time since 1991, we have the Edmonton Oilers versus the Calgary Flames.
Yes, sir.
Uh, oh my God. I don't even know where to start. Let's get started with the history between these two teams in the playoffs. Well, they faced each other in the last time they faced each other was 1991. Um, where give me a second, the Oilers beat the Flames in 7 games in 1988. The Oilers won in a sweep, and in 1984 it was Edmonton who won in 7 games, and in 1983 Edmonton won in 5. So like Edmonton really has a good record against the Flames, but the thing is that will history repeat itself, or will the Calgary Flames finally get over that hump and finally win their first series against the Edmonton Oilers in history?
And one thing that's really interesting, right? Going into a little bit more of history, there's actually a few players from the Calgary Flames that are going to be playing their former team, and vice versa. One in particular is Mike Smith. Playing used to play for the Oilers now. Used to play for Calgary. Sorry, now plays for the Oilers. And obviously, Milan Lucic as well played for Calgary. Also played for the Oilers. So there's definitely some rivalry there in between the Edmonton and the Flames. But one thing that's really interesting, and I think there's a big question mark around this series, is Leon Draisaitl. Draisaitl, we saw in Game 7 and obviously in the series against LA that he was kind of playing injured, and it looked like he may have, you know, hurt himself in a way that may keep him out of this series. And so there's no confirmation as to whether or not Draisaitl is going to sit out any games this series, but he does seem to be banged up. And the question becomes, if Draisaitl is not at 100%, and if he's unable to continue playing for some reason, or he's out for a couple of games, that definitely takes a big toll on the Edmonton Oilers moving forward. But one guy that continues to shine in the NHL and continues to be a difference maker every single night is Connor McDavid, and he single-handedly took the Oilers from where they were against the LA Kings and brought them to the second round. So obviously, best player in the world, Connor McDavid, doing what he does best. But one thing that's going to also surprise me and really interest me is Calgary. Didn't score that many goals in the Dallas series. It was a very low scoring series. Jake Ottinger stood on his head, which shout out to him. He was fantastic in the Dallas series for Dallas versus Calgary series. But just in terms of that, I think there's a lot of guys on Calgary that didn't do so great. You look at Matthew Tkachuk, 1 goal in 7 games. I know he has 6 points, but you expect more from him there. Johnny Gaudreau, same thing, 2 goals. Lindholm with 3, so not too great. And obviously Tyler Toffoli, 1 goal as well, which he scored yesterday. So Calgary in this series is going to be about trying to score goals and trying to see if they can find a way to put the puck in the net. If they can find a way to score some goals, then I think it's going to be a fascinating series. But we all know that Calgary and Edmonton, we know the hatred between each other. We know how big this rivalry is, and obviously it's going to be a bloodbath. I don't expect a lot of fighting, expect a lot of hits, a lot of dirty hits, a lot of suspensions, and a lot of penalties, because that's what I feel like this series is going to be. And I think it goes the distance. I think it goes 7 games, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I'm really excited for it for sure.
I mean, look, the Calgary Flames are literally built to win a Stanley Cup. From
Yeah.
their first line all the way down to their fourth line, they have a lot of depth. We know that Sean Monahan is not playing. It's not like he was playing great hockey, anyways. So that could be seen as not really a significant loss. They added Tyler Toffoli. They added what's his name? The Markstrom, Jacob Markstrom's cousin, and also Elias Lindblom's
Callie
cousin.
Youngberg.
Yeah, they have Jan Krok as well. So I mean, they added depth in terms of offense, but I mean, having Johnny Gaudreau having the freaking season of his life, and also a really strong playoff series as well, scoring the OT winner against Jake Ottinger in the Game 7 final versus the Dallas Stars. You have um, also Matthew Tkachuk, who is going
Yeah.
to bring his A game in this series. And I think he's going to be the MVP for Calgary in this series, because this is
Yeah.
going to require a lot of physicality, a lot of chirping, and a lot of penalty minutes, to be
Yeah,
honest. And on Edmonton's side, I think two guys, their pain in the ass is going to be Evander Kane, and I would love to see an Evander Kane and Matthew Tkachuk fight, like a solid, like he throws a punch and then he comes back with another punch, and it just continues. I don't want the
yeah,
refs to like break that stuff up. I want to see that fight. That's the ideal fight. I mean, you also have guys like Zach Cassian. You have Mikael Backlund as well. You have Dylan Dubé. I mean, big bodies, on both ends of the
yeah.
of the ice. So, I
Well,
mean, this is big boy hockey in this
one
series.
one thing that is crazy to me actually is that what a signing Evander Kane has been for the Oilers, man. He's been fantastic for Edmonton, and I think that it goes to show you that Evander Kane's a talented player, and I think apart from the off ice stuff, which has been settled, this guy's a difference maker on a team, and we saw it last year in San Jose, and obviously now he's playing on an Edmonton Oilers team, and he's playing alongside Leon Draisaitl, and he's playing really really well. He's playing some fantastic hockey, probably some of the best hockey he's played in his career. And I'm not surprised because we talk about Connor McDavid, and I talked about McDavid before, but I forgot to mention Evander Kane's got 7 goals in these playoffs in 7 games, right? So he's a goal a game player, this guy, and it's been fantastic. He's got 9 points in 7 games. He's been solid. But
He's
I
their
just want to
second
address,
best player, Tyler Draisaitl, 9
you
points each in 7 games, and obviously Connor McDavid being the MVP for the
yeah.
Oilers and against the Los Angeles Kings, having 14 points in
Well,
7 games. So that's
what's
fantastic.
interesting? What's interesting too is actually we have a comment right here from Jaden Iconetti. He says Calgary in 6, and then he goes, Mike Smith isn't good enough. And actually, I have an opinion on Mike Smith. Everybody knows my opinion on Mike Smith.
He
I think
Luca
I don't.
refers to
I
him
don't
as the baseball player of
yeah,
hockey.
I don't think Mike Smith's a goalie. I think he's a baseball player. The way he plays goalie, he kind of looks like a baseball player. I don't know if anybody else sees it. Maybe I'm just crazy, but I don't think he's an NHL goaltender. I don't think he's an NHL caliber goaltender, and I think he's a fraud. But in terms of that, going back to talking positively about the Edmonton Oilers, um, I just think that personally, Edmonton's actually impressed me, and I think a lot of guys on that team apart from goaltending, has impressed me.
Can
Evan
I
Bouchard is
mention two guys that really impressed me on the Edmonton Oilers?
well, yeah. I'll just name you my 2, which is Cody Ceci and Evan Bouchard. I don't know if those
Yeah,
were your
yeah,
2
those are
guys,
my two. Those are my two. So
but
Cody Ceci, 6 points in 7 games, and Evan Bouchard, 5 points in 7 games. So
yeah,
they're currently the best defenseman on the Edmonton Oilers, better
yeah.
than Darnell Nurse, who missed a game due to suspension, headbutting Phil Dano, the pizza man, and also Tyson Barry too, and newly acquired Brett Kulak. 3 assists in 7 games. Pretty impressive stuff. But
Habs legend.
having Duncan Keith, having Archibald, Ryan Fogel, um, McLeod. Uh,
McLeod.
you know, these are big bodies, man. Like this is gonna be a physical series. Like I don't know if there's gonna be a lot of goals in this series because you have Florida and Tampa, two very offensively minded teams. You're gonna expect a lot of goals. Okay, then you have Colorado and St. Louis, two offensively minded teams. Even though I would say St. Louis does have defensive upside. They have a very underrated defensive core. You expect a lot of goals in that series. Then you have the Rangers and Carolina Hurricanes. You're going to expect a lot of goals because they're offensively minded too. But this series is the only series where I think it's going to be very tight in terms of the score sheet. It's going to be very
I don't know.
close.
I don't know, man. I'll
That's
be
my
honest.
prediction.
I kind of disagree with that, and I'm gonna tell you why. I think we kind of saw that Calgary in last series against Dallas, they got goalied, right? Ottinger stood on his head. He was fantastic.
Hey, Mike Smith got two shutouts in the
I
first round,
I
so
know people are
don't
gonna
discredit him. The
people are
guy's
gonna
not
rip.
bad.
I know. I'm already expecting to get ripped in the comments, bro. But listen, in terms of that,
When
here's
he's
the thing.
hot, he's hot, and currently he's hot. So
He's hot, but here's
congrats
the
to him.
thing. I think Calgary's a team that's going to be able to solve Mike Smith, and I think especially with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and obviously Evander Kane on the other end of the ice. I think this is a team. I think this is a series that's going to end in like really close games. Like I'm talking 4-3, 5-4 type hockey games, where it's going to be really high scoring games. And people might disagree with me on that, but it's just I look at two teams. I look at Calgary, who's really good defensively, and I look at Edmonton, who's really good offensively. And I think it's just a recipe to just, be really crazy. And I think that obviously Calgary's got decent offense, and we know that Edmonton's defense at times can be really, really bad. So there's definitely room for improvement. But I think one thing that's going to settle this series too, and actually actually be really interesting, is the coaching battle. Now, the reason why, and I know because of coaching,
Daryl
well, yeah,
Sutter,
look,
two-time
Daryl
Stanley Cup
Sutter's,
champion with the Kings.
that's it. And Jay Woodcroft, who's been fantastic since coming in for Edmonton and has really changed the style of play in Edmonton and the way they do things, he's been really good. And I'm curious to see, under his first playoffs with Edmonton coach, how's he going to handle this pressure of the Battle of Alberta? Because it's a big pressure. And it's a pressure that, a coach that's got a winning pedigree like Daryl Sutter may prepare his team a little bit more.
Because the Edmonton Oilers are better in terms of leadership and depth compared to last season, and you have also Calgary, who improved compared to last year, where they missed the playoffs,
Yeah.
and they got bigger in size, and they played Daryl Sutter type of hockey. You have Milan Lucic, you have Zadarov, you have
Yeah.
Zadorov, sorry, you have Tanev, who's dealing with an injury, but I think he should be back for this series. You have Dylan Dubé, Goodbranson, Clinton, Hannafin, like these guys are huge guys. Like, and yeah, they don't have the most offensive upside, but my man, can they really like slow you down? If you're gonna come down the ice or down the middle, they're gonna lay a hit on you.
Yeah.
And we saw them play very physical against Dallas. But my concern, there's also Blake Coleman as well,
Yes.
who I would say is an underrated piece of Calgary's success.
Only
But
1 point in 7 games though in the
yeah,
Dallas
I
series.
mean, he's never gonna replicate the success he had with Tampa, especially the chemistry he had with Gordon Goudreau.
Yeah.
But Rasmus Anderson needs to step up his game in terms of offensive production. Surprisingly, Michael Stone has been their best defenseman so far. And on terms of offense, Trevor Lewis, not bad. 3 points in 7 games, but I mean, when you look at the stats in terms of Calgary, they heavily relied on three guys: Lindholm, Tkachuk, and
Yeah.
Gaudreau. And if I'm not mistaken, that's their first line. And we were saying in the Dallas and Flames series that Dallas had a one-line team, but it seems like in last series Calgary had a one-line team. But they won ultimately, but they need to improve. They need to wake up and smell the coffee and play the same type of way that they played in the regular season, where they were scoring a bunch of goals, and not only goals from the first line, the second line, the third line, the fourth line, and
Yeah.
even from their defense. And we didn't see that in the first round. I have to say that despite that round being the closest in terms of like not having the most goals conceded on each side of the team, because each side of the ice having Odinger and Markstrom playing very solid hockey, um, Calgary was expected to blow out Dallas in 4 games or
Yeah.
5 games,
Yeah.
So them going to 7 games against Dallas was probably the biggest upset, the biggest shock for people.
Well, one thing I want to say too, and obviously we talk about goaltending and we talk about teams letting in or save percentages too. You talked about Mike Smith having a 938 with 2 shutouts. Jacob Markstrom had a 943, right? And Jacob Markstrom all season has been the best, probably one of the best goalies in the league. He's a Vezina candidate to me. I think if Shesterkin doesn't get it, I think Markstrom should. But I think that's going to play a big role in this series as well. Obviously, I think it's going to be a high-scoring series. I don't think Markstrom's going to keep up his 943, but I think in terms of that, you've got a guy
I
who's
think
been
he's gonna
really good all
excel in this
season,
series,
and
and
so
unless
we'll see what
the Edmonton
happens.
Oilers are really get into his head.
Yeah,
Because I mean, that's what tends
one
to happen in the Battle of Alberta. There's
one
always
thing
breaking points in
One
those
thing
in
I
those
really
games.
like about this series too, and actually Travis Bruno just addressed it, which is the short travel will help each team. That being said, Calgary is battle hardened. Yarcroc will break out this series, and then he goes, every goalie cools off. Mike Smith will cool off. I agree with both those things. I think, look, the fact that it's a short travel for both teams is going to be beneficial because I think it leads to teams being less tired, right? They don't have to travel a lot. They're in pretty much the same province. They are in the same province, so it's going to be very easy to just get home and kind of go back. So it's going to be fun in that case. But I agree. I think goalies cool off. And I think Mike Smith, we saw him in the series against LA. And, yeah, he played well. He did. But at the same time, he's 41 years old. How long do you really think he's going to last before Do you think he keeps up this pace all playoffs? I don't think so. And I think you're coming up against a team like Calgary. You came up against a team like LA, who's not really known for their goal scoring.
Yeah,
Now you're
Edmonton
coming
were
up against a team like
the
Calgary,
clear
who's one of
cut
the best in the league.
favorites, even though they took the Oilers
Yeah,
to 7 game. The LA Kings
Kings.
took the Oilers
Yeah.
to 7 games. So I mean, even with that being said, there was even predictions that people were saying that the Oilers were going to choke and LA was going to come out on top, and that didn't happen.
So
Um,
so what are your predictions then?
my
What's your
prediction for
what's your
this
prediction?
series is the Calgary Flames in 6,
You know
and
what?
but with
I'm
one
gonna stick with that
condition.
too.
But one condition, if the Flames offense are able to produce at the rate that they were during the regular season. If they're not, then this is going to be a 7 game series and it could go either way because look,
I'm going Calgary in 6 too.
but as of right now, Calgary in 6, they have the better goaltender, they have the better defense. Edmonton need Darnell Nurse and Tyson Berry to step up. Evan Bouchard's playing good hockey. Cody Cece's playing some great hockey, but they
Yeah.
need they need at least two functioning pairings, not just two functioning guys. Darnell Nurse also needs to stay out of the box and stay away from suspensions as well. Calgary's defense very underrated. They played some solid hockey. I don't have a problem with the goaltending or defense for Calgary. I have a problem with the offense. And one guy that really needs to step up on the Calgary Flames, two guys, Andrew Mangiapane and Tyler Toffoli, two Italians. So so those guys really would have to play a factor in the series. But for me, the two MVPs heading into this or for this series are going to be Vander Kane and Matthew Tkachuk because they're the ideal players in terms of this series. They are going to define this playoff series. Physical guys, they're ball busters. They're going to be in the box a lot. They're gonna score key goals. They're gonna cause a lot of crap on the ice, and I'm excited for that. And for
Yeah.
people that want to have a sense of what the regular matchup was in terms of the Calgary Flames versus the Edmonton Oilers, Calgary was 2-2-0 versus Edmonton, and Edmonton was 2-2-0 against. Uh,
So none of these games went to overtime then, since
yeah, so I mean,
which is
it
pretty
was very
cool.
very close. And one
But
last thing I would like to say is
yeah,
we are very fortunate to be living in this time right now because we are witnessing Tony D'Angelo versus his former team. So that's funny. We
yeah.
have the Battle of Alberta, which is going to be very good hockey, and the Battle of Florida. So, so the battle of a
And
state
then
and
and
a
then
battle
and
of a
then St. Louis and
province.
Colorado.
Yeah, and then there's like just bad blood between St. Louis and Colorado because St. Louis were technically cheated last year because of COVID. Guys like David Perron, who are key contributors to their playoff success and to their team success, had COVID last year in the first
Yeah,
round, and they were missing key guys, and that's why Colorado swept them. So this is going to be a whole different series this year.
yeah,
Expect, I would say, all games to go to 6 or 7, all series to go to 6 or 7 games, but there could be an upset and maybe it ends a lot quicker. And I would say the earliest the series ends is 5. But this concludes our round 2 matchup series. We hope you enjoyed every single matchup so far. We're gonna continue our matchup videos for round 3 when the time comes, and then cover the finals. We just want to say thank you so much for following us. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel if you haven't, share this with any person that's interested in the Battle of Alberta, fellow Canadians, fellow people of Alberta, Alberta, of course, Calgary and Edmonton. This is going to be interesting to hear what you guys have to say. So write that in the comments section below. And one last thing to answer Travis. Yes, the Flames are built for the playoffs and they have the best coach so far in terms of playoff experience. But I want to show you guys one last thing before we go on and we're going to end the episode. We have Calgary versus the Edmonton
Edmonton.
Oilers. So
Nice.
I'm going to leave you guys off with this image. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a nice night, guys.